thank you all very much for your strength and your courage and your boldness to highlight these absolutely essential time-bound goals that you've presented today. And Asha, thank you for listing those stakeholders that we have to hold accountable. That's what I meant earlier when I said, you know, we can create words, we can write documents. I know that you were all up until the wee hours of the morning getting this ready for today's session. You know, this is the result of a lot of hard work. But unless we form these partnerships and we actually can translate that into action, we're not going to make the progress that we need to make. And I also would like to thank you, Mark and Mamadou, for being here with us. I know that two very large global initiatives and issues that are going on formed a platform, a basis for the development of the Youth Action Plan. And one of those was the Youth and UNAIDS PACT for Social Transformation. And the other has been the dialogue that continues now in the lead up to the post-2015 development agenda. And so as two leaders, two stakeholders, we don't have all of the others on stage with us, but as two stakeholders representing two very important agencies, the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, and UNAIDS, I'd now like to throw over to both of you, Mamadou and Mark, to maybe share some comments with us about how you see the work that you're doing in your respective agencies will be able to support and take those initial steps to starting to achieve some of the actions that you've heard from these young people today.
Or just to throw in something here, isn't it so that they have done the work for UNAIDS now? You can basically just copy and paste the action plan here, because the word that you're missing today in some way, I would say, a lot of this is already on the agenda for UNAIDS, but it's the word love. I don't find that in the UNAIDS strategy. So will we get it there? But what we wanted to hear from you also was more your practical engagement with young people and supporting young leadership. And we have from the Swedish and Norwegian side been very much engaged with also what you call PACT. And I think we would like to hear a little bit more from you in terms of what is that in practice.
Thank you very much, Anders and Alicia. Good morning. Let me first of all bring you greetings from Mr. Michel Sidibe and his regret of not being with you on this important session for other unavoidable engagement. But I promise you that I would deliver faithfully the key messages that he has given me to share with you in this important session. I couldn't find a better way of starting this conversation, Anders, than using your last question and the word love. It may have been missing in the jargon and the rhetoric and the write-up of some of the UNAIDS things, but it is underlining all actions, steps, initiatives taken by the organization in the past few years in trying to ensure that young people are moved from passive recipients of programs into active leaders and shapers of these programs to specifically look at their interests and their needs. Love first has meant to us by calling the attention of the global AIDS response community on the fact that actually this group of people, which bears the highest and most disproportionate burden of the HIV epidemic, has not yet been given the opportunity to unleash its tremendous potential in shaping the agenda, in shaping the actions, and also in shaping the response in a way that what we are dreaming of today, the end of the AIDS epidemic by 2030, become a reality and not just a dream. Love in the sense that not just passive compassion, but active compassion on the suffering and the disproportionate share of burden of ill health that has befallen this specific group, and that can only be summed with one single statistics that I'm taking out of the declaration here, which says, and I read, between the years 2005 and 2012, while HIV-related deaths has globally been reduced by more than 30%, during the same time span, we have seen almost a 50% increase in the number of AIDS-related deaths among young people and adolescents. If we truly mean love, why wouldn't we specifically address the issues that drive the epidemic in that specific group with a view of not only reducing the rate of infections, but ensuring that the people in that particular group are helped to know their status, and when known, that they are offered the opportunity to access life-saving treatment, care, and support services. I couldn't find a better definition of love than all of us teaming up together to try to really live up to that expectations and also live up and try to drive back that's very terrible statistics. Love in the sense that actually the pact that has now been shared with the young people, which they are driving, is aimed at not only being a think tank, but what I can call, and don't quote me on this, an action tank. Meaning that actually what is aimed for, what is dreamed of, is not necessarily to continue endless meetings and consultations and analysis and reports, but galvanizing the youth and tapping into the great potential of this group in trying to shape up how we could respond and how we can rise up to the challenge of making HIV/AIDS services, care, and support available to each and every one of us who needs it, so that our dream of ending the epidemic by 2030 is reached. Love in the sense that actually the actions to translate that into specific, meaningful inroads into the work is already taking shape. You alluded to, Anders and Alicia, about the ongoing discussions about shaping up the agenda of the post-2015 development framework. In the region that I have the pleasure of leading, my marching orders from Michel Sidibé has been simple. Roll up your sleeves, get down to the field, and mobilize the support of the youth networks to ensure that the leaders in West and Central Africa are held to account, that they are made to understand that actually the discussions about getting HIV/AIDS response, sexual and reproductive health issues on the post-2015 agenda is not a maybe, it is a must. And that the young people stand ready to drive that agenda all the way until negotiations are closed, and that we have a prominent role of these specific issues in the post-2015 agenda. And secondly, go down to the field and work with the youth leaders to ensure that anyone working with HIV/AIDS and human rights in the region have their feet kept in the fire until they deliver on their specific commitment of increasing the participation of youth into designing national policies and programs, and they increase the domestic resources that they pledge and make available to these programs that are specifically devoted to the young people. These are some of the few definitions that I can find to really illustrate the love aspect of our programs and our focus on the youth. I would like to leave you with a few departing thoughts. On the issue of the post-2015, as I speak, work is already underway in West and Central Africa with the leadership of Nigeria to start the PACT 2015 program, which has been funded by UNAIDS and which is rolling out as I speak in Nigeria, with a view of providing the platform, the venue, and the convening facilities for the young people to start deciding how they would like to shape up the agenda on the post-2015. Nigeria has keenly accepted to take the leadership. And once completed in Nigeria, we intend to have a regional forum whereby we will discuss and share experiences across countries and then contribute those ideas to the global debate. Finally, Anders and Alicia, my way of thanking you for having invited UNAIDS to be part of this conversation is to pledge that actually our relationship with the young, the adolescent, is something that is very keen in the heart of UNAIDS. We not only need their love and their passion, but we also need their capacity to mobilize. We've learned a great deal about the young people's ability to mobilize when we launched and worked on the Crowd Out AIDS program. The lessons in mobilizing, galvanizing, rallying people around specific issues that we learn from that initiative will stand to shape and guide our action in support of these good people. My last thought is that actually, if we dream of ending AIDS by 2030, let me propose that our first and a good step would be having an HIV-free generation to happen, and then we know we're in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I heard UNA saying love 18 times, so you have actually have an impact already. Great. Mark, I'm not going to ask you the question of whether the Global Fund is going to spend more money on youth activities, but I'm going to ask you another question. I think you're becoming more and more known to be a very smart person.
Because I wasn't before.
You might have been, but I didn't know you so well then. But you're always looking for the most strategic investments. But not only the most strategic investment, but also the most strategic partnerships and the most strategic thinkers. You're always looking for the best possible sort of how can we achieve better impact. So my question to you is then, how are you going to engage with young leaders that have different perspectives than you have, possibly, different knowledge, different solutions? On a more practical level, how will you be able to benefit from different kind of thinking, possibly smarter thinking, in order to get better impact from the investment from the Global Fund?
It's a great question, Anders, and I want to begin by thanking all of you for the work you did and for your leadership. And I think your question is right, Anders, because we have paid a lot of lip service to youth for a long time, and we put people, we'll have big meetings and have a young person to represent the world, and then we've met our obligation for youth engagement. Yes. And it's a massive problem. And Anders, I want to thank you and the Swedish government and some of the other Nordic countries for really forcing us to think about this in a different way. So I don't have the answer to that. So one thing I want to point out is people say the Global Fund should do this, the Global Fund should do that. I agree with you, but the Global Fund is not a group of people in Geneva. We're a secretariat. You're the Global Fund, actually. So we were actually created as a partnership organization. And it really is up to people to come together, as Anders was pointing out, as a partnership to solve problems. It's not a group in Geneva that's going to deliver on any of the things that you actually put forward. And the way the approaches we're trying to take are to bring the deepest insights and the best insights at the country level, principally to drive change. It has to be global too, and there have to be standards, and but it has to actually happen at the country level. So I really appreciate that, and this is a way to answer your question, Anders. I really appreciate that you delivered this to us. I want to deliver it back to you, because you're the ones who actually have to deliver this. And we need to give you the space to do it, but you're the ones who actually have to deliver it. And so let me just cover 3 topics related to your question, Anders, and how youth actually have to take the responsibility to solve the problems. All of these things need to be solved. They're going to take a long time. You really focus on policy and legal issues, which is appropriate. That takes a long, long time. We can actually, I believe anyway, bring this epidemic under control before we change all these things. We need to do it, and we will. But if we work smartly, and if you all engage in the powerful way you can, in 3 areas, which I'll mention quickly, but a lot more, we will get there. And then we'll change the laws along the way, because we need to do that. The first is advocacy. And what you're doing today here is advocacy, and it's right to do it at the global level, but it has to be at the local level. And if you talk to leaders in countries today, I don't care if it's France or South Africa, they talk about youth all the time. Not necessarily because they care what you think, but because they're scared to death of you, actually.
Yes.
And they're afraid of the not afraid, but are intrigued by the political power you have. As Anders mentioned, a lot of countries in which we operate, more than half the population is youth. In some countries, it's 60, 70% of the population. Politicians read voting, right? So they know that if they want to stay in power, if they want to keep doing what they're doing, they need young people. But youth has not mobilized in a sustained way around anything yet, actually. So my challenge to you, back to you, is create a global youth movement to end the HIV epidemic and take charge of it globally, but actually in country. And if you look at this, and I've spent some time on it, The only example of a youth movement that lasted more than an election cycle. So, you get politicians coming to you for vote, vote, vote for the next 6 months, and that works. The only thing that's ever lasted was Darfur, which was actually a youth-led movement, but it lasted 10 months. And then people got busy and went and did other things, right? So figure out a way, and we're not going to be able to do this. You know the tools, you have the technology, you have the thoughts, you will be the ones to figure out how to create a movement to end the AIDS epidemic that's driven by youth. And related to that is coming up with the solutions for programs and interventions that will help protect youth. So we have too many people our age, Anders and my age, who've been around way too long. We are still using the same programs to reach people at risk of HIV that we used 10 or 15 years ago. And you don't live in the same places. I mean, we do billboards, we do, programs in bars. That's not what's happening in your world, right? So do you know what the Kuros Foundation is? So there's this group, Kuros, of young entrepreneurs, and I went out to talk with them about this very issue. Because we keep asking people our age to come up with solutions for young people, which is never going to work. So within the span of a half hour, they came up with 10 brilliant ideas of how young people could connect with each other in the ways you contact and work with each other so that you take responsibility for the infection. So you can ask us to deal with youth, or you can deal with youth, right? So you're the ones who are going to come up with solutions that work for you. You're the ones that are going to empower people in a direction, in a way we would never even conceive of. And you will figure out the mechanisms to do it. And what we need to do is give you the space and the empowerment, but you're going to have to take the responsibility to figure out the solutions, both for the movement and for the interventions. The reality is those young people are at risk, at greatest risk, whether it's MSM populations that are increasing. It's really the young MSM in the US and Europe that are at risk today, in Australia too. We're not reaching them, because we're not where they are. We're not investing in interventions where they live. It's the same in Africa, it's the same in Asia. You all are going to have to be the ones to come up with the solutions for that. And the last is actually taking the responsibility for that. You're the ones that need to protect yourselves. We're not going to protect you. You're going to have to protect yourselves. You're going to have to figure out how to build the communities among yourself as young people to protect yourself and the different interventions. The methods we used 10 years ago, the youth clubs we created, were created for a different time, a different generation, a different technological capability and advancement, and a different way people communicated with each other. So challenge us to give you the space, but don't challenge us to find the solutions. Challenge yourselves to find the solutions.
So you have an invitation now. The space is there, and possibly a joint space here with both the Global Fund and UNAIDS. So now it's a matter of taking that opportunity.